So, welcome to another episode of Ask Infinity. Today we have a very special Infinity. Her name is Dee Ferguson, and I'm excited to chat with her. She is a good friend of mine, and we're going to have a great conversation today. And full disclosure, truth be told, this will be our second time doing this interview because the first time we got connection issues and we had such incredible gems, and the connection was not there on the internet. So the internet failed us, but today, internet gods,
please,
we're sending a prayer.
Yeah.
And that being said, Dee, I'm going to give you the floor. Tell us a little bit about who you are and what you're up to, what you do, and then we're going to get into today's topic.
Okay. Hi, everyone at Ask Infinity. I'm so honored that Jordan asked me to speak with him today. I am retired, divorced mom of two girls, worked for the government for 32 years, sort of in an office behind a computer screen. Truth, I never thought that's what I would do for my career, but it's what I ended up doing. And now that I'm retired, I feel like I am really beginning to figure out my purpose and my journey. And so, I'm actually retired, floating around, spending half my time in Jamaica, half my time in Canada, and looking for the tug, looking for the pull, reading, speaking to certain people, just following my heart and my purpose. And that process is amazing because I'm meeting a lot of great people and just seeing where my life is going to take me now,
So already I'm excited because like what you just said is incredible. And I think that we should be in that space all the time. Like, yeah. I think it's funny that we wait until we retire or we're no longer working to be in that space. But I congratulate you because that's a beautiful place to be. Just going with the flow is what spiritual people would call it.
Yes.
It's easier said than done. I think everyone can agree to that.
That is true.
So welcome, thank you. So something interesting happened. Originally, I had Dee on the podcast because I made a Facebook post. And, I was just looking for taboo things to talk about. And so I got on my computer, started typing, and I put in, what did I type? I typed, what are the most taboo topics? And I got like 1 billion people respond. And I think you, Dee, were the only one who said white privilege. Sorry, I said white privilege and white supremacy. And then you said that you were feeling called to talk about white privilege. And I was like, okay, I wasn't prepared to talk about it, but I was like, I think this is something that we should definitely channel and communicate because it doesn't get talked about enough. And I knew I was onto something because I think there was like 50 comments under yours and people were like, clapping back. It was like,
yeah.
There was so many different, what do you call it? Counter perspectives, and that's when I knew, like, okay, this is something that we should get on here and chat about. So let's start with this. I think it's important that we are clear so that people listening and watching understand what we're trying to communicate. So first, I would love for you to define what white privilege means for you, and then I'll take it from there.
Okay. I had to do some research, some talking, some, soul searching to figure out what it meant for me. Because to be honest with you, the first time I heard that phrase, I had the same reaction that I think many white people have. It's that I don't have privilege. I had to work for everything. I didn't have a silver spoon in my mouth. I don't know what you're talking about. That's insulting to white people, et cetera, et cetera. All of these things I'm saying are embarrassing for me to admit. So, the fact that we're recording it and you're going to put it out there for everyone is a little hard for me, but I feel like it's imperative to talk about it. So after doing some, listening to podcasts, talking to my friends of color, reading books, I realized what it means to me is that any of my challenges or struggles in my life have never been because of the color of my skin, ever. And when I use that explanation to talk to my white friends about this, because this has given me the courage to begin having these conversations, which I never would have done before. So when I have this conversation and I use that definition of white privilege, every single person I've talked to agrees. You're right. None of my challenges or my problems in my life have ever been because of my color. And I'm talking about some of these people are, you know, country folk that hunt and might use slurs that they don't even realize are racial slurs. But when I give them that description, it's like the light bulb goes on and they go, okay, I understand what you're saying. And that alone is like a win. Just even allowing them to understand that we have privilege simply because of the color of our skin. So, you know, once you accept that, then you're kind of open to, okay, well, now that I have this knowledge, now that I understand I had privilege, what am I going to do with that? You know, so I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, and you caught me off guard because I was just about to search a movie. You just really hit home with that. Samuel Jackson did a movie, and people who know the movie are ahead of me right now. But the lawyer in that movie did what you just did to prove the case. And oh my God, you just like hit me with so much there. So it makes sense. I've never actually worded it or have heard it worded that way. And when you word it that way, I can see why it kind of pulls them out of, you know, it pulls them into self-reflection, right?
Yes.
I call it the fish out of water.
And out of that defensive position, because typically people go right into a defensive position when they hear that, and it takes them right out of that, and they go, oh, okay, we can talk about this now, you know?
Yeah. And I'm surprised that you were able to pull that together, because like that's not an easy thing to do. To simplify and communicate to someone something so complex in a way that is simple. Like that's something that I work on every single day, because communication is a big deal for me.
Yeah.
And man, like that's huge what you just said to me. Okay,
Yeah.
so when you say that to people who are Caucasian, what is the response normally, and what do you feel like you would like the response to be?
Well, just to take one little step back, usually the reason I'm explaining this definition is because something's happened. Something was said that's made me uncomfortable, right? A joke was made, which I will say 5 years ago, I would have felt uncomfortable inside, but I wouldn't have done anything about it. And that's the difference for me now. That's why I'm so excited to talk to you, because now I feel like I'm ready to start doing something about this. And, you know, my friends of color, you know, have been standing on the rooftops yelling for hundreds of years, and it's not making a difference the way I thought it would have by now. And I realized, well, I need to stand on the rooftop with my, you know, my friends of color and yell with them. It can't just be you know, people of color fighting that. So these conversations are usually started with somebody making a joke or using a phrase or something. And I am now kind of checking myself and going, silence is just as bad as saying the racial slur. And I'm taking ownership of that and responsibility for that, that I might as well say the slur. If I'm not going to stand up and say that's not okay with me, I might as well say it. And that took me a little while to get there, right? So they've probably said something and I go, actually, you know, that's pretty insulting to people of color, and it you know, it disregards the history of slavery and the ghetto and the full jails and, you know, segregation, and, you know, and so and then I talk about white privilege. I give that definition, and I do this kind of all in one or two breaths to allow them to hear me, once I give that definition, it's like, and these are people that are my friends. And so these are, good people, but they just didn't know. They didn't know what they were saying was hurtful. So as soon as I give that definition, it seems, Jordan, like they open up to me and they go, oh, I never thought of it that way. Where did you learn that? And then I begin to tell my story and how I got here today. What made me change, what made me start to take action. And sorry, this makes me weepy because, these are big conversations, and I have a lot of shame for not doing this work sooner in my life. As a young person, I always felt that there were people that were not being treated properly. I remember noticing, like, whether it was part of the LGBTQ community or people of color, people from different countries. Part of me knew that there was something wrong in the world, but I was so, I was busy conforming. I was busy being the good little white girl, doing what my parents expected of me. I love my parents dearly. They're still both alive and I'm blessed to have them, but I was busy trying to fit in that box, Jordan. So this emotion that you're seeing is my shame, just for not doing this work sooner, so it's important to me.
Yeah, thank you so much. I appreciate you. It's one thing to have the transition and to be of a new mind, but it's another thing entirely to take responsibility for sharing your new perspectives with other people who you feel need to see the world in a new way.
Yeah.
So I appreciate you. I really do. And you said a few times somewhere in there that you went through something, like there's a story there. So I'm just curious, what was your transition into understanding that? And you can keep it as brief as you like. What was your transition into understanding that not only was there a problem, but there was maybe something that you could do about it?
Mm-hmm. Wow, I'm feeling, I just, my heart is pounding, like this is a good conversation. Yeah, truthfully, so I mentioned when I was a young person, part of me recognized that there was people that needed my voice, but I didn't feel like I had the tools or the strength or the bravery when I was younger to do it. To be honest with you, it was George Floyd for me. And I know the whole world talked about that when it happened, but it just made me say, like, that's enough. That's enough. I have to figure out what I can do differently, because for me, so I'm 55 years old. So for me, I remember Rodney King like it was yesterday, and I was shocked and horrified and thought that this was going to change the world, that video of his beating was going to change the world. But I was raising children. I was, busy working in my corporate job, doing all those things I thought I was supposed to do. So I guess I thought other people would fix it. I felt bad. It was awful, but I went back to my normal life right after the news captured his story. So when Rodney King happened, it took me back to when George Floyd happened, it took me right back to Rodney King. And I thought, nothing's changed. I couldn't believe it. I just kept thinking about it and thinking about it and thinking about it. And then I started having conversations with my friends. So I reached out to my friends of color that I felt comfortable enough to say, look, maybe you're tired of talking about this, because it feels like my friends, like my Black friends and my friends of color have tried to talk about this, but they were all so gracious, and they said, yeah, I'm happy to have a conversation with you, because, I guess maybe they knew I was ready, or I was willing to help, or I had a voice. So I just started going and talking to my friends, and then reading. one of my friends recommended White Fragility to me. Very hard book for me as a white person to read, but needed to be read to understand my white privilege, and pointed out. So like every conversation I've had now, every book, every documentary I've read now is adding to my knowledge about the history of Black people and people of color, you know, and then, you know, you add to my journey all the tragedy of the residential schools and finding all the graves. It's like, yes, even though that's awful, I feel like the world is getting ready for change. Like we have to see the horrors for us to change, which is terrible too, but these lives have to mean something, you know? So once I felt more knowledgeable, I started to feel ready to call people on the stuff that I see that makes me feel uncomfortable. And that's what I started to do. So I see a joke posted on Facebook. I've been shut down. I've been told, I don't need to talk about this with you. No, there's nothing to talk about. And I think, oh, well, you're not a person I want to be friends with anymore. If you're not even willing to have a conversation with me about this, then I need to check on my friend status with you, you know? So I've just begun to have these conversations with people. And then, so when you did your post, that's the thing that was on the forefront of my mind. And when you contacted me and said you wanted to talk about it, I thought, oh my God, like my mind is blown, because I'm still in the early stages of learning and understanding. But if I can help in some small way, if I can open a few people's minds about this and maybe change their behavior or change the types of phrases that come out of their mouth, like that's something. But, you know, I think there's a lot more work to be done, you know?
Definitely, 100%. And you said something so cool there that I want to highlight, because I think it's so key. The purpose of this conversation is not to give people fuel to go on a witch hunt. Like that's not why we're here. And I want to bring people's attention to something you just said. You said that there was somebody on your Facebook, and they, you reached out because they had choice words, and they just weren't ready for the conversation.
Right.
And that's okay. Like I need to stress that. Not everybody is ready to wake up. I call it from the Matrix. And we should not be judging them for that.
True.
But the thing that I loved about your story was, because you were in flow, you found an opportunity, aka this podcast, to send your message, to broadcast your message, to share your message, right?
Yeah.
And that's the important thing, is we don't chastise people. You know, we're not sitting on high horses. It doesn't matter. And I know this is really hard for some people to hear, because people in the Black community feel justified, as they should. What I've learned is that, it doesn't matter how justified you are. I had to, as a Black man, make the choice. Do I want to be right, or do I want to be a conduit for healing?
Right.
And I think this is where, both of our communities are clashing all the time. It's, the Black community is often saying, we're right. Look at history, and we're gonna chastise you, and we're gonna look down on you, and we're gonna treat you badly. And I think that in the Black community we have all right, but at a certain point you have to ask yourself: is it more important to be right, or is it more important that we find a way to move on? Is it more important that we find a way to coexist? And people don't like hearing this. It's like, when you're in a relationship and you just want to be right, and then by the end of that argument or that conversation that you had with your significant other, you made it. You happen to be right, but guess what? You burnt yourself. You burnt so many bridges. You dug a ditch so deep that it was like, at what cost?
Right.
What did it cost you to be right? Now you're right. You're sleeping on the couch. Great. You won, right? But it's like, there's too much collateral damage. And I think that's where we're at now, is how can we acknowledge the past, right? Hold people accountable, right? I think people from my community and people from your community, which is, it's weird to say because we're both humans, but I think people from both of our racial communities should be held accountable in different ways, right?
Yeah.
And there's a way to do that with dignity and without shaming the other person,
Right.
because at the end of the day, we're all human beings. We're all trying to make it work. We're all trying to make it happen right now. And some of us are in ignorance and some of us are not. And so unfortunately, it's on those who know to be the bigger people. So if you know something is right, like you, right? I know people who feel self-righteous because they're Caucasian and they're fighting for the Black struggle.
Mm-hmm.
And so they make other Caucasian people feel terrible. And I don't agree with that. I think that that's not the way that we go about this. I think what you did was the right thing. It's okay, this person is not ready to have this conversation. So I'm just gonna remove them. Because that's all we can do is, okay, I can tailor who I am and what I put out, and I can tailor who comes into my life and who I keep around me. And that's
Right.
it. If we can just understand that, then I think we'd be okay. So applause to you. You handled that very well. And I think that's what we need more of. I'm so happy that we got to this place in this particular conversation, because I don't know if we did on the original podcast.
I don't know either. Yeah.
And I'm so impressed by that. Can you repeat it one more time? The way you worded it was so unique. What were you saying to people again? Can you say it one more time?
Oh, about the definition, basically.
Yes, about the definition.
Oh, I said that none of your struggles or challenges or difficulties in your life have ever been because of the color of your skin. And nobody's disagreed with me yet.
Oh my God. I'm gonna like take that snippet and just keep that in my back pocket, because I like it. I think that it really does accomplish everything that I would want to accomplish when having this conversation. I don't want to put people down. I want people to just be self-reflective.
No. Right. And I truthfully, I think that I recognize in myself someone who I never would have thought I was racist, or I have some Black friends, I can't be racist and all. So I was one of those people. Had somebody like me approached me 10 years ago, I would have been defensive. I would have said, hey, I have Black friends and I've had to work hard for everything. I would have responded in that way, and the future Dee might have unfriended me, So I am trying to be empathetic, that you don't know until you know. No, but who's teaching me this? Nobody's teaching me this. You can watch movies about slavery and go, yeah, that was terrible. But, I'll admit to you, Jordan, that I've said things like, to Black friends, I've said things like, look, I didn't own slaves. My family did not own slaves. It was hundreds of years ago. Please let it go. I'm a good person. Why are you angry at me? And, again, saying these things out loud is embarrassing. But I'm choosing to be very vulnerable with you, because if I'm thinking that, if I've reacted that way in the past, but now I've changed the way I look at this situation, then other people can too. And this is what's happened when I talk to my friends. They're thinking in a certain way, but Jordan, I had to work hard. Like, I had to read about the history of slavery and understand what happened when slavery was abolished. And, you think, oh, everything was okay after that. No, it was not. And so when you look at that history, that culture, I mean, it's actually hard to believe that actually went on. But, and so lots of people are still absolutely feeling the effects of slavery hundreds of years later, living in a ghetto in different states or in places in Canada, and not having a leg up. Sometimes I think, if you pluck that child out of that situation, right, out of that poor ghetto where everybody is, different shades of Black or brown or whatever, and plunk them into a white privileged neighborhood with the schooling and the education and all the brand name clothes, they would perform differently. They would feel differently about themselves. they'll probably get disconnected from their heritage, their culture, their history. But I'm just saying it would be quite different, you know. So you have to fight for everything, and I didn't. But it's like I said, I'm almost embarrassed now. One of my Black friends said to me, I'm going to ask you a question, Dee. I said, okay, I'm ready. She said, how many Black people are at your dinner table? And I was like, can I swear?
Yeah, definitely.
Shit. I'm feeling woke. I'm having all these conversations with my Black friends. And one of them asked me that question. And I kind of like, you know, went in my mind and looked around my dinner table, and I didn't have anybody of color at my dinner table. And again, embarrassment, shame. So then I start to examine, like, why is that the case? Now, I did tell you I spend half my time in Jamaica. That doesn't really mean anything. Who's at my dinner table? So I started to reach out. Like, I went to a small school I was raised in Burlington, Ontario. So pretty white community, you know, with a few Black families in there. Do I have friends from high school that are Black? Sure, excuse me. But my closest circle, it's all whitey, white. My neighborhood was whitey, white. So it just made me, like, that question was like, oh. So if a white person wants to make a difference, they have to work, they have to feel uncomfortable, and they have to go looking for opportunities. Like, go and sit down with people of color, go have people at your dinner table, go make sure your children have friends that are from other cultures. Like, there's no other way to understand it unless you put yourself right in their shoes. But I mean, I didn't do that work when I was younger. But guess what? I've got my first grandbaby on the way soon, and she's gonna learn some stuff with grandma. My daughter already knows that, but you know, we need to do something different. You know.
Most definitely, most definitely.
Mhm.
It's funny because you're reminding me of Russell Peters, and I feel like part of why, you know, race exists is because we're not exposed to it. And Russell Peters, the comedian, for those of you who don't know, he's a
Yes.
comedian.
Yeah.
Comedian. He grew up in a multicultural space, and you know, he had a lot of Jamaicans around him, a lot of, you know, every culture. He had a soup because in Toronto, Canada, we live in a medley of cultures, right?
True.
And I think honestly that helps us solve this issue moving forward. But something that I've often contemplated, and I've been in this conversation for quite a while, and I'm curious to hear your perspective on this. I've had somebody who was Caucasian say, you know, the black community makes excuses a lot, you know, in terms of getting themselves together. You know, what's the word I'm looking for here? And making something of themselves. So it's kind of like the black community self-perpetuating the situation that is causing racism to exist. So how do you feel about that particular sentiment?
You know, it calls to mind, there's a video out there of Morgan Freeman saying something like, stop talking about race. If you want racism to go away, stop talking about it. And I still always wonder, did he actually say that? Was it taken out of context? You know, I'm not sure about that, but, you know, I think I've said similar things. And I think my response is that it's not an excuse, it's a fact, right? So if a Black person is trying to explain their history, their family dynamics, their upbringing, their neighborhood, how hard it was, like, you know, yeah, are there successful, rich Black people? Sure. What did they have to overcome? Probably a whole hell of a lot more than me. That's just the truth. Not everybody. So I don't really know how to respond to it, but I know it makes me feel uncomfortable. And I know I've probably said something similar, like, okay, like it's like a person with childhood trauma, which this often would be, right? Somebody that's had an assault on them or had something with their family. You know, well, it's 20 years ago, just get over it and move on and make a success of your life. But I mean, it takes a lot of therapy, which you have to have money to have therapy, by the way, right? That's even a white privilege sometimes, is just having access to assistance or help or support. So, but I've been there. I've felt that same thing until I started doing my work, until I decided I've had enough. I've had enough of this, and not like enough of hearing people of color talk about this, but enough of the world not changing. Come on, it's time. And we've been doing a lot of things wrong. This is just one of them, really. But you know, I feel like I have an opportunity. And like you said, when I sit back and look for the pull, your post came up, opportunities are presenting itself. And I think I just need to go with that and have these conversations, and not to be punitive or make people feel bad, but let's just talk about this. Can we just talk about this? I feel like I've woken up and that I could do better. I've also, like I said, watched a lot of documentaries and stuff, and maybe people aren't ready to read books, but there's some tough documentaries, even movies, you know, that when they see us, about the 5 Black youth that were arrested for the murder of that woman in Central Park, wrongly accused, and that was hard to watch, you know, but also important to watch it. So there's lots and lots of stories like that that maybe people can watch one and just begin to think about it, you know.
Okay, so I have a question. Thank you so much for sharing that. Because what you just said kind of sparked something, and it made me think, maybe you're privileged. Is it possible, Dee, that you're in a community that doesn't judge you for having a progressive state of mind? And is it possible that there are Caucasians who, if they were to express an interest in understanding people in the Black community more, that they would potentially be judged by their peers?
Oh yeah, I feel it already. I am taking a risk here. I'm taking a
Oh,
risk. Oh yeah. Yeah. Like I said that I, you know, might unfriend someone on Facebook, but I mean, I've had a conversation with my parents about this. They're in their late 70s. It was a different time back when they were growing up and things. So it's a risk. I've lost some friends already because I'm speaking up, because they are on the defensive, and I understand. And like you said earlier, that's okay. But yeah, so is it a privilege? Like, yeah, you're right. I can safely speak about this without fear of being beaten up or, you know, fired. I might lose friends, and I'm okay with that, actually. But that is part of my white privilege, that I can start having these conversations and bringing this up, because I mean, what's the downside? I lose a couple friends that were racist, and I'm okay with that. But you're right, that in and of itself is, you know, I can just go to the store and buy the book that my friend recommended I read, and I can, yeah, so probably there is some of that. Also, I mean, I have a psychologist that is aware of me doing this work, and I talk to her regularly, and even having her as part of my support system is probably, you know, considered some privilege, right? The fact that I'm able to access that kind of support. But it's risky, and maybe not as risky as a person of color doing some of this work, because they're just simply judged as soon as they walk into a room. Maybe I can get away with some things a little bit more. You know, that's a great question, because I probably didn't even recognize that, you know, so, but yeah, I have had to, my heart starts to pound, you know, I get sweaty palms when I'm thinking, oh boy, I don't want to confront them, but that's how I feel like. I feel like it's about to be a confrontation, but I really just want to have a conversation and ask you a question. Do you understand what it means when you say a phrase like that? Do you know what the history is? But I feel nervous. Then I have to think, well, why am I nervous? Well, they might not like me after this. They might unfriend me. They might tell other people about Dee and her opinions, but actually that's okay. It's just outside of my comfort zone. It's change, and change is not always easy. excuse me, but that's all okay. I'm actually okay with all of it.
Beautiful,
Mm.
beautiful. Yeah, it's so funny. And it's like, I just realized I asked a similar question to people in the Black community
Okay.
to kind of shock them into self-realization and or self-awareness. And that question is this. I go, is it possible that even the Black community being persecuted in North America is also privileged? Because I got to thinking, I'm like, I think we're all privileged to some degree. If you're in the first world, right? And this is what I say. If you're in America, you're in Canada, you're actually privileged, right? And I often see these people in the Black community kind of on a high horse saying, you know, Black rights or this or that. And I think all these things are amazing. But I think what's missing is the compassion. And that's why I'm bringing this story up for people who are ignorant. Because when I ask them, you know, are you privileged or more privileged in any way than other communities? And they think and they go, not really, because all this is happening, all that is happening. And then I go, well, okay, when you go to your kitchen and you turn the tap, does water magically come out of the tap there? And then they go, yeah. And like 100% of the time, they act like this is absolutely like, you know, the lowest thing that could ever happen. Like this is the most essential service. They feel like they're entitled to that privilege. And then I have to say, well, you know, like there's millions of people who don't have a magic tap thing in their kitchen. They don't even have a kitchen.
Right.
And then they have a moment where they're like, oh, yeah, I guess so. And it's like, okay, so you need to understand too that just like people in the white community it may go over their head that they're privileged, right? You have to also come from a place of compassion, right? Because we all are living with a certain level of privilege that we take for granted, right? That somebody else would kill for, and people are killing for.
That's true.
And I think for me, that's where I want us to end this dialogue. Obviously, the dialogue is going to continue, but I have one more question for you before we get out of here. But that's where I want to kind of end it, because unless you had something to share, because I want us to understand, know what one side is right. This is just a shitty situation all around. And the more that we can come together as individuals and as people in our respective communities and say, okay, maybe there's some things I don't know that you know, and sit down and talk and just connect and communicate. I feel like the easier it will be for us moving forward and in living in a, what's the word I'm looking for here? Coexisting together. But yeah, I'm just curious to know if you had any more thoughts, and if not, anything to share, then I'm going to ask you the final question. We'll wrap this sucker up.
Yeah, no, I think I would just add to your comment about first world versus developing countries, having spent quite a bit of time in Jamaica, and I come back to Canada and I'm almost overwhelmed with privilege. I'm almost overwhelmed with, wait, I have electricity all the time. I have hot water coming out of my taps. And I mean, I've totally taken this for granted my whole life. I have, you know, an abundance of kind of everything. And it's hard for me to adjust when I come back, because I live with very little when I'm down there, which I actually love. It's a much simpler life. So there are lots of viewpoints and lots of definitions and examples of privilege, right? So we happen to be talking about white privilege, but you're right. There are lots of other examples of privilege. And if people can just have a respectful conversation out of like love and a willingness to do better, that's all I'm trying to do, really just work on myself. Like I can't change you, Jordan, or change anybody else. When someone opens the door for me and they're willing to have a conversation about a difficult subject, and I feel like I can do that with compassion and love and a calm, non-judgmental voice, then I'm taking that opportunity. I'm jumping in with both feet, right? I'm looking for those moments, right? I'm like, oh, I think she's open having this conversation, so I'm going for it, and I'm having those conversations. So I agree with everything you said as well. Yeah.
Beautiful. That's a great way to tie a bow on top of this whole thing. Thank you. Thank you so much. I just want to take a moment to just say thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, because I know it is not easy. And you took the road less traveled to talk about something that is not easy to talk about. So thank you from the bottom of my heart. I appreciate you. And I just want to, I want to put out the intention that you will be blessed for the rest of your life. So thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so this is completely unrelated to our conversation, or maybe it's related, I don't know. But I asked all my guests the same thing because I would love to get their perspective on this. And the question is this: infinity. How do you? Oh yeah, I forgot. You've already answered this. So you got some practice. Let's see if you refine it. Let's see if you change it.
I don't even remember what I said last time, but
okay, good. That's a good thing. Okay, so infinity. What is it? How do you experience it? What would you use? What words would you use to describe it? How do you feel it? You can answer one or any of these combinations of the questions, but essentially is what is infinity and how do you experience it? That's the core question.
All right. Okay. And I'll just say before I answer your question that you're thanking me for doing this, having this conversation with you. But I mean, you'll owe you all the gratitude. Giving me the opportunity to have this conversation in a more public way is sort of amping up what I've been pulled to do. And so I appreciate you and the work that you're doing, and giving me a platform. And when this, I'm both nervous and excited for whenever this gets published and people get to see it. Wow, like what's going to happen after that, and I know we'll continue to talk, you and I, because we're going to see things happen after this is published, right? So thank you. I appreciate you as well. So infinity, for me, in the last, say, 5 years or so, I've been kind of on a journey of figuring out who I am, what my purpose is, going in, getting unbusy in the world of expectations and figuring out who Dee is, and yoga, meditation, taking different courses and things like that. And when I began that journey, I thought it was going to be something like you take the course, you learn the stuff, and you are enlightened and you can go on with your life, But then I very quickly realized that is not the case. And so the infinity piece for me is that I am going to be learning and growing and changing and widening my perspective for the rest of my earthly life, and then hopefully for the rest of my energetic life. This is actually what life is about, and it's exciting, right? It's an infinite amount of learning. I have infinite seconds and moments to improve the kind of person I was, maybe a little bit better than yesterday, improve my empathy, my knowledge, my growth. I might have retired from one career, but I have like time for another whole career. And, you and I recently lost a friend. Can we give a little shout out to Wayne Moulin, who we miss dearly. But Wayne was here for a much shorter time than any of us thought he was going to be. I don't know when my last day is going to be, but I don't want to have any regrets. I want to live my life, let's use every moment that we have. So infinity is ongoing opportunity, and sort of the effect it can have on everyone around you, all the energy around you, the way I conduct myself in life, the effect I want to have on a room when I walk into it, or that's infinity. When I have a good positive interaction with one person, that person might go home and have a good positive interaction with someone else, and they may smile to their neighbor, and the neighbor might smile to the taxi driver, and the taxi driver might smile to the grocery store clerk. And that there are infinite possibilities, infinite reactions that we know nothing about. When we have a little positive interaction, we have no idea whose life we're positively, impacting. So infinity is like my hair's standing up on end because the word is not a word I use in my daily, speech. But when you think about it, it's like it energizes me, right? So it's like, this is powerful stuff, Yeah.
Dee, thank you so much. I got a new saying. This is what I say to people now. Have a great day, month, year, life.
Yeah. Yes.